What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have a 5 MEO DIPT / alcohol / cannabis / cocaine trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Different Experience, Not for Party, and was submitted to Erowid in 2007 by the user Anon. With all that being said, let our story begin. I've had a habit of taking psychedelics on New Year's Eve for a couple of years now, and I wanted to keep up the nice tradition for New Year's 2002-2003. However, I had decided that last summer not to take LSD anymore, and I couldn't find shrooms, which would have been my first choice. So I started the evening thinking that I would be only drinking fine champagne and maybe some vodka that night. Another matter for background information is that this happened in my home country, out of which I moved away some 6 years ago. I only go back on vacations, so I have good old friends there, whom I don't see enough anymore. However, one of the best friends of mine, let's call him A, found some 5 MEO DIPT that night. I never heard of it before, but he had taken it before and told me it would be somewhat similar to psilocybin, with sounds being weirder and also having nice dancing experiences. We had already resolved to go to a club later in the morning to dance, so I was very happy that he had saved my night. Usually I always research into drugs before I try them, but it was already the evening of New Year's Eve, and this seemed like not too different from what I knew, so I decided to go ahead. I shouldn't have. So we went to a usual, to us, New Year's party. Many people there, maybe 20 to 30. The atmosphere was quite rowdy, but friendly, alcohol being clearly the drug of choice. So there A gave me, B and C our doses of 5-MeO DIPT. Me, B, and C decided to take our capsules, 24 milligrams, each immediately. This was around 8 or 9 in the evening. Another person in the party, familiar with Foxy, had told us that the 24 milligrams would be a good dose. Person A decided to wait. I took one as a capsule. The other I mixed with water and drank it, for a quicker onset. The taste was awful, but I got rid of it with more water. Then I proceeded to drink some of the champagne that I brought with me. Ended up drinking about a third of the bottle. The rest I shared with friends. The 5-MeO DIPT was obviously nauseating after this stage, and the champagne didn't help. Quite the contrary. I felt very strong cold shivers going constantly through my body. This is a very common occurrence with me in psychedelics, especially LSD. So it told me that something was going on, though this time the shivers were very intense. I went to take a crap, during which my pupils doubled in size. My vision had also gone a bit red-shifted. I felt like lying down, so I went to lie on the couch. I was still comfortable, but somehow unusually anxious and trembly. My stomach was still protesting. There was a spliff of bad quality hash passing around that I toked to help, but it didn't help, nor did it get me stoned. Usually I only smoke quality. I felt inside me that something was definitely happening, but I didn't yet know where it would take me. Then we left the apartment. Outside, the temperature was below -20 Celsius. This had felt cold in a nasty way before the ingestion. However, now it felt very right, as if my cold shivers could finally express themselves. I've never felt so good in the cold ever before. I got very strong waves of cold coming from my feet to my head, each one feeling like an almost orgasmic wave of well-being. It was nice being cold. We walked to this tube station slowly, shooting some rockets in between. I was realizing that Foxy definitely produces very funny body hallucinations, so that my body felt different from normal. We took the tube and separated on it. Me and A went to one party, while B, C, and some others went to C's place. Me and A took a bus. The snow that clinged to the back window of the bus looked, well, trippy, but different from what I had been used to, so I deduced that I wasn't tripping. The movement of the bus was feeling also weird, as transmitted to me through the seat. All the vibrations and bumps were very vivid, and I could clearly feel the shape of the road beneath the bus this way. Once we got to the party, I started getting slight effect on my thought patterns, though still not like on LSD. Then I started noticing that at this stage, probably the most strong psychedelic effect was the way once in a while I changed my unconscious attitude toward the situation and surroundings. It was as if I was changing my emotional status over and over and over, not from sad to happy or to angry or so. This was much more subtle. It was more like changing from being in some place where I was comfortable with good friends to some place unfamiliar with people that I felt insecure with, to then again something else, and so on. But even this description does not do justice. It was even more subtle, but still somehow very profound. Sorry, I can't explain it. It wasn't affecting me almost at all at an intellectual or thought level, but affecting something deeper and more primal, more emotional. I couldn't analyze these feelings very well. However, the visual effects were very, very slight still, and had to really be fetched out. They weren't at all as easy and prevalent as is with most other psychedelics. Then I realized that the party had a Coke serving for everyone. So to boost the trip, which I still felt was somewhat weak, I decided to take some. I don't know how much, because this was my second time doing Coke, but I asked for only a very little bit, due to my inexperience, and even more due to combining it with an unknown substance. Previous time had been the previous New Year, combined with cannabis, LSD, and MDMA, and it had been a very profound trip. The effect was almost immediate. The guy who made my lines asked me to describe what this foxy stuff felt like. But then I snorted, and I couldn't explain it because my trip changed suddenly so much. I got much more vivid visuals, quite like on shrooms, and then of course the additional well-being of Coke. So I told him to wait and let me explore this new world. I went to lie on a couch, feeling very euphoric. Then I was passed a bong with good skunk. Since I'm a fairly heavy dope smoker, I tend to combine cannabis with all other drugs, at least at some point of the trip or effect. However, now I hadn't been smoking for a couple days. I took a big drag, filling the pipe with an amount that would make me lie on the floor in euphoria if I hadn't taken anything before. But after everything that I had taken so far, I didn't get at all that usual wave of relaxation. Actually, it seemed like I didn't do anything. But what happened next was quite profound. First, I kept on talking to people around me and looking at the surroundings and so on. Then I took a very comfortable position on the couch, closed my eyes, and wow, reality, this whole existence and universe, seemed to go away from me at an incredible speed. It was as if I was falling through the couch, which was not there in my head anymore, really, millions of light years away, and that all reality became as distant as a little star in the night sky, a mere point separated from me by an incomprehensible distance. I got first a bit frightened and opened my eyes. Everything was back to normal. I closed them again, and again I traveled to this other dimension of existence, as that is what it felt like. I kept doing this for the next 4 hours, lying on the couch, being most of the time completely still, and just living in this other place, once in a while coming back to normal reality. The transition was as easy as closing my eyes, so I could freely choose where I was. That's how the year passed to me, on a couch. So what was this other universe like? It is hard to explain the other place. It was very structural, filled with structures vaguely resembling buildings with complex shapes, a bit like Gothic architecture, but at the same time nothing of the like. But these weren't mere closed-eye visuals, as they engaged all of my senses. My body would disappear when I decided to go to this other universe. Instead, I would feel as my body, this multitude of shapes with thousands of arches and towers and the like, always morphing into each other and disappearing altogether and being reborn out of nothingness. They felt as natural as my fingers or my legs feel normally. But at the same time, I would see these structures in front of me. So I would actually be looking at this complex, universe body of mine from a small distance away. What this world was like was strongly influenced by the sounds of the real world, which seemed to come to my universe via some wormhole connecting reality and my universe. The living room, where I was, had psychedelic trance playing quite loud. That was fine with me. It created beautiful structures, but most of the people at the party were there too, so their voices influenced my world significantly, sometimes fittingly, sometimes not. Once I almost asked the guy next to me to shut up, because his voice was creating very ugly purple structures. But then I realized the ridiculousness of such a demand. So I decided to stay quiet to myself. I wasn't really paying attention to sounds as themselves. Instead, I interpreted them visually. Like, for example, if someone was calling me, I would see a structure flying about which corresponded to my name, and by seeing that structure, I knew I was called. So I would open my eyes and come back to reality. I wouldn't really hear most things, or I would hear them, but I didn't pay any attention. But back in reality, it was always very surprising to notice that everything was normal. I wouldn't even have the formerly mentioned open-eye visuals anymore, but to a very slight extent. It was really like taking that wormhole back and forth between reality, as it is really not tripped out at all, and my universe, merely by taking a comfortable position and closing my eyes. Because I couldn't get almost anything unusual out of normal reality, I rather stayed in my own dream world. However, I was the only one tripping. Even A hadn't taken his dose yet. The rest of the 10 or so people in that party were habitual smokers who did psychedelics once in a while. So quite like me, but they had decided to be more up for New Year's, and exceptionally were taking coke and drinking and having a usual party. So my experience was quite incompatible with my surroundings, and I did feel some strain due to this. This is also because I wanted to stay completely immobile and immersed in this special otherness to enjoy this unique experience rather than waste my time in reality, which was just like normal. This caused people to freak out a bit and start talking about all sorts of things. So, lying there still on the couch, I was still often the topic of conversation, ranging from discussion on whether I had overdosed to just why did this guy come here to pass out. I hadn't passed out. I was just as aware as ever, and I was feeling very good physically. But I felt I had to come back to reality once in a while to calm the others down, and so they wouldn't be concerned about my state. So I think I ended wasting a lot of time in reality. But more importantly, this created some negative feelings. I started feeling out of place, which I obviously was. But I had wanted to push that feeling away. Once I realized in the beginning that I was going to have a profound entheogenic experience by accident. Okay, with everything I took, you could say I was looking for it. But I can take LSD and the kind for parties. People around were partying actively. I was lying on the couch, except when I was in reality, when I made an effort to show that I was feeling okay, active, normal, etc., not to worry the others. It was the wrong setting, definitely. There were too many things going on. Too many noises. Ideally, I would have been with a soulmate/girlfriend, together naked under blankets in a bed, each in their own world, but communicating via touching and speaking. But since I don't now have a girlfriend, the best option would have been to have, say, 3 other people in the same state, who could all go into their universes and come back and then share the experience and suggest mind games to be performed in that other place. Communication wouldn't have to have been limited to reality. I could speak while I was in the other place, and it seemed that my words were taken out by the same wormhole that brought the sounds to me, while of course in reality I would be merely talking. But if others were in their own universe, their wormholes could bring my message to them, and they would understand them. In this way, I could have created universes together with others, which I felt very much urged to do, though completely incapable, as there were no others. I felt that I could have had a very deep spiritual connection with people going through the same. But I started feeling more and more distant from the people in the party. I really wanted to have that spiritual connection. I also wanted to talk about my experiences with someone who would be going through the same. I tried to convince person A to take his dose to join me, but he was exceptionally unresponsive, as if he was avoiding talking to me, or me altogether. I tried to explain the profundity of my experience, and that I really craved for him to join me, but he didn't seem to be able to understand it all. Or maybe I couldn't explain. Anyway, eventually he took only 12 milligrams, some 4 hours later after I had taken mine. so I knew that he was not going to join my journey. Person A has been one of my best friends since we were 7 years old in the same class. So this lack of understanding from him in my hour of need, not meaning that he didn't want to join me tripping nearly as much as just the general ignoring of what I was saying, scarred my heart deeply. I still feel that pain strongly. Maybe we have indeed grown apart while I've been living away. I've felt this a bit for a while now. But then, tripping there, I felt it heart-crunchingly strong. The owner of the place was an old friend as well, as were a couple of other people there. I was also saddened by the fact that that was the only time I saw these people over my vacation, and I went to ruin it by taking something too potent and not being in chatting condition. Well, I was able to chat, but I knew the trip wouldn't last long, so why waste it chatting about normal things? This also hindered my ability to enjoy the trip. Even though she said that it was good to see that I was having a good time, and that I should enjoy it. Still, I was thinking often that I was at the same time wasting my chance to exchange our news. So all in all, it was totally the wrong setting. But I had not planned for a full-blown, entheogenic experience lasting for many hours. I had planned for some party psychedelia. However, as I noticed what I was getting into, I thought it best to just ride it out and get out of it what I possibly could. I've learned with psychedelics that I do have a strong psyche, so I knew I could ride it out. Anyway, it was very comforting to me that I still felt what I would consider my usual self on the level of thoughts, more so than on LSD, for example. Also, the fact that I could at will turn on and off this dissociated state of another universe was very easing. In the beginning, the party also felt like it was okay for tripping. I thought that after being in my universe, it was nice to have such a nice home of reality to come back to. This made a big difference. But as I continued staying away more and longer, people seemed to relate to me differently. Maybe this was also that emotional hallucinogen part of Foxy doing its job. I don't know. Anyway, eventually, after 3 hours or so, mainly lying on the couch, I got sick of being the focus of so many discussions while I was in my universe that I started exploring reality. Reality wasn't that interesting compared to what it would have been if I had been sober. Stronger open-eye visuals really had to be fetched, and they weren't that vivid. Lesser patterning was also less vivid. Person A decided then to leave to the dance party, and I decided to leave the hectic party and try to find something more calm. And since the rave was next to C's place, I went along, but to C's place. The people there were as rowdy, but only 6 or 7. The music was worse. C didn't like the electronic music and the rock he played, though I tried to guide him to choose something trippy. Wasn't very visual at all. There most people were taking mainly speed and MDMA. Neither B nor C had had any proper hallucinogenic effect from the Foxy. B, who is another of my best friends, had only had promises, but no real psychedelic effect. So I took him to C's bed with me, and we laid down and kept calm. I could no longer go back to my universe by closing my eyes. I got merely some faint closed-eye visuals, but as we were laying there, B noticed that the faces of Brad Pitt and Edward Norton on a Fight Club poster were changing quite wildly as he looked, and I got the same immediately. We kept on staring at those. Then we started staring at each other. The effect did not come if people moved or changed their expression. But if one could fixate on a face, it would start morphing very strongly. We established that our experience of this was very similar. For example, my bearded friend B could swap from himself to someone repulsively mutilated in a car crash, to a baby, to a girl, to an old man, and so on in merely seconds. Facial expressions would also change a lot. Anyway, any face I would fixate on would change in less than a couple of seconds to something totally different. Sometimes noses would make eyes, or eyebrows mouths, or very strong effects like this. This happened even when normal psychedelic patterns gave only very weak open-eye visuals. Also, this facial morphing seemed to be the most persistent effect, apart from insomnia. I could make it happen even after 10 hours from taking the DIPT. We stayed there looking at faces, but eventually they became boring. I've seen that already symptom. Then everyone left C's place to go to yet another place, where I stayed an hour before walking home, and I arrived at around 8 in the morning. I tried to sleep, just to discover the insomnia effect. I felt this throughout the next day, and decided to drink several beers the next evening to help overcome this and actually fall asleep. All right, everybody. That is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your 5 MEO DIPT experiences down in the comments. Check out the other playlists on my channel, and I will see you in the next one, fam. Deuces.